Don, comment here that Maryland looks like a quick strike team. Yeah, we know. I mean, they are obviously they apparently they look good against Kent State. Obviously, I didn't watch that game. I'm sure you'll watch that game back, Don. But
I don't even know if I can find it on TV. It was not on in real time today. It was a 2:30 game, and I think the Big Ten Network.
they gave
Somebody.
us the other one. I think it was Illinois Purdue that they televised.
Yeah, we got the wrong game. We got Illinois Purdue. You're right. So I don't know. Maybe, I know what'll happen. We'll get it. We'll at least get the 60-minute version off the Big Ten Network. That'll be the first chance I'll have to see it, is the condensed version.
Michael Brobston, I don't trust our offense as much as our defense. Well, yeah, I would obviously agree with that. Corn and cattle, another thing we all need to remember is that we are a huge target for teams wanting to make a name for themselves with the top 5 rating. Yeah, Don, you said it. Hunted now.
Yeah, we're the hunted. Yeah, that just goes with the territory. If you're not prepared for that, then you shouldn't be playing football.
And Michael says, do we really deserve to be number 5? Maybe that will help us beat Maryland and Penn State. Well, the rankings not going to help anything. You got to go out and play football, and I'd rather there not be rankings at this point. To me, they make no sense. Why do we even have the AP and the coaches poll when they mean nothing? The college football playoff poll is what decides the playoff in the end anyways.
Coach Fry had a phrase for that. It was called, the answer was coffee talk. It's just coffee talk. Something for the fans to talk about.
All right, let's see here. I do have a few questions of mine that I want to get to for you, Don. If you didn't notice, Iowa State lost to Baylor today.
So, I knew they were behind. I didn't know. I didn't hear a final, but I knew they were down by.
I think it was a 2 or 3 point loss. I'd have to look back at the score. That's not good for Iowa. Now you got Indiana with 2 losses and Iowa State with 2 losses. Now I get it. You can't control what your opponents do, but those 2 wins don't look quite as good as we thought they'd look.
Right. And if you're a voter, of course, you take all those things into account.
John Daufeld, at least 2 dropped interceptions. The one early from Jack Kerner, I would consider that a drop. That would have been a tough catch to make, but he had it. And I don't know the other ones were really drops. Jacobs came close on a deflection late in the game, as did Y.A. Black at the line of scrimmage. There may have been one that I'm missing. And Doug does say 2-point loss by State. John Daufeld, coffee talk. I love Coach Fry. I like that comment. Okay, let's get to a couple of my concerns, or at least questions that I like to throw out to you as I make notes during the game, Don. And a couple of these are kind of inconsequential moving forward, but I am curious as to your viewpoint on these. Let me get the score up for anybody who's new or who's just tuning in now to our show. Pop up the score here: 24-14 Iowa over Colorado State. Okay. I become more and more frustrated every week with Iowa running the ball on 3rd and 11 at their own 8-yard line. Are we just? Explain it to me, Don, for a fan who doesn't know better, I guess.
Well, if it were a draw play, I would be able to defend it a little bit better. Because a draw play, of course, is supposed to have the best chance when the defensive line is really charging hard up the field, right? But it wasn't even a draw play you're referring to. It was some kind of zone.
Well, they ran one draw play with Pottebaum, the fullback, on like 3rd. I think it was like 3rd and 11. Are you really expecting Pottebaum to get 11 yards on a draw play on 3rd and 11?
No.
So why are we running that play? We're just giving up on the drive and saying we want to give some space?
Well, I do know this. I'm pretty sure we were beaten today on critical down conversion success. And I say that only because I'm aware that they converted in one drive. They converted twice on 3rd and 11, once on 3rd and 9, and all in the same drive. Maybe that was their second touchdown drive, I think. But as you mentioned, we got into 3rd and long, 3rd and extra long far too often. And in general, we didn't convert. You can even argue that we didn't really try to convert. But I think one reason we might be conservative at that moment is we have a lot of faith in our defense and we have a lot of faith in our punter and our punt coverage. So we think we can flip the field and play defense.
And they were going with the win there, and ended up being the drive that I'm thinking of ended up being the shanked punt from Taylor. So in hindsight, it didn't look very good. But again, they were going with the win, so theoretically he could have flipped the field the way Taylor punts, but that was not one of his better punts.
Right.
Here was a kind of a weird thing, and I thought you would notice it as a coach, Don. So I believe this was end of the first quarter, and there was probably 30 seconds left. Colorado State had the ball. They had the wind at their backs. It's third down, and they wait until probably 4 or 5 seconds to snap it on third down, which makes sense. You'd snap it before the quarter changes and you lose the wind. So they snap it, but the problem is they waited so long that by the time the play was over, the quarter had ended, and then they had to punt into the wind to start the second quarter. And I remember saying it to myself while I was watching the game, why didn't they snap it earlier to ensure that they were able to punt with the wind? Did you notice that at the end of the first?
Well, to my knowledge now, of course, it's hard for me to tell. I don't know exactly what the wind's doing down on the field, but I do recall, and of course, I noticed the flags in the stadium all the time. I think officially the wind was out of the west today. So I remember thinking, even this morning, the wind's not much of a factor because it's going to be a crosswind. I do think as the day played out, the wind shifted a little bit to the southwest, and maybe that's what you're talking about.
That's what it seemed like to me, but again, you were there, so you would know what the wind was doing better.
I don't think the wind was a huge effect.
Okay.
Just a slight effect because it was primarily a crosswind.
Okay. Well, that answers my questions. Excessive celebration penalty. I hate this rule, and it seems like it is not enforced consistently. I don't know what the criteria is to flag guys. Why is it flagged on some players and not others? Why did LaPorta get one today?
Well, you saw specifically why he got it, right?
He spun the ball in the end zone. Is that
why? That's it.
Who cares? Why are we flagging these guys for this?
Good question.
What a waste of training.
The irony, of course, is contrast that to what the NFL does on Sunday. Every time they score.
What are the rules for the NFL for celebration?
There are no rules for celebration. Apparently, they just do anything and everything.
They do whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
so I don't know. It seems crazy that he didn't taunt another player, or he didn't even acknowledge the crowd. Sometimes they play to the crowd, and sometimes that doesn't get flagged. Typically, just a week ago, I remember Tyler scoring, and as he scored, he reacted to the people in the end zone. He was just acknowledging, "I'm happy that you're happy." I think that was really all he was doing. It was a very innocent movement on his part. He was not flagged a week ago for it. And yet spinning the ball in the end zone is a foul. So it seems a little silly. It does. I'll admit that.
Well, and I guess the way I look at it is let the guys do what they want unless there's a taunting, which is a different penalty, right? I mean, that's a totally different penalty. Call taunting, or if it's a delay of game, if they're delaying the flow of the game, then I'm fine with the flag. But I don't know why we're wasting our time. We've got other issues with the targeting penalties, which I think are just right now the criteria for targeting is messed up.
And people might say, well, it's not that big a deal. Well, yeah, it is actually, because we have to kick off from the 20-yard line. And remember what happened on that kickoff?
Yes.
Hooked out of bounds, and all of a sudden they are 1st and 10 at the 50-yard line.
Yeah, and they ended. Yeah, I mean, Iowa had all the momentum, but it could have switched like that because of field position.
Yep.
So
absolutely true.
Okay. Did it seem to you at all, Don, and maybe it was just the offensive line, there weren't a whole lot of large lanes for Tyler Goodson to attack. Did he seem to you like he was a bit hesitant today? He seems to make his cuts quicker and hit the holes harder in a typical week. He just seemed hesitant to me.
I think probably if we could talk to Tyler right now, he would say, well, I was just a little confused as to where to go. A back, of course, runs to daylight, and there really weren't very many good options a lot of the time. And that forces him to appear to be more hesitant because he's simply searching for a path, and there's not one to materialize that's a very good choice. I think that was his problem today. And I know he got loose one time for 26 or 27 yards, I think, but otherwise nothing above 10 yards, I don't think. They did a good job of keeping us bottled up. No long runs. We ended up rushing for what, less than 60 yards, maybe? When you factor in,
if you're counting in sacks, Iowa rushed for 54 yards. Goodson by himself, Don. Tyler Goodson ran for 57 yards, 3.2 an attempt. But if you combine that with sacks and, of course, what Ivory Kelly Martin did and Gavin Williams on his couple of attempts, Iowa ended up with 2.2 yards per carry.
yeah.
And that number, that is my biggest takeaway from today, Don, of this game, is Iowa's inability to run the ball effectively. To me, I know that this is probably an underrated Colorado State team, Don, but don't you have to be able to run the ball well against a Mountain West team at home?
Well, I made a comment to the guy sitting in front of me. I simply stated at the end of the game, I said, it's hard to win a football game if you don't run the ball effectively. And we experienced that today. We found a way to win the game, but it was a struggle. And frankly, if we couldn't hit a couple of up and over throws and couldn't get a really, really short field one time, what was that, a 6 or 7 yard touchdown drive? It would have been a game that would have probably gone right to the wire. So we're fortunate that we were able to have a double-digit win, a 10-point win. At least it's not a one-score win. Those one-score wins, of course, you're sweating it out right to the last snap. And one thing we do have to work on, there was a time, thankfully it wasn't a one-score game, but late, we have what we call 4-minute offense. Let me explain. Everybody knows what 2-minute offense is. You may or may not know what 4-minute offense is. 4-minute offense is entirely different than 2-minute. 4-minute involves you being ahead and protecting a lead and burning clock. And we didn't do that as quickly as I wished we would have. I do recall with about maybe 3 minutes left, we snapped the ball with 11 seconds on the clock. It may not sound like a big deal, but let's face it, if you get right to the end, every second does matter. And just something for us to be aware of. I think we went to 4-minute mode, I think the very next snap, as I recall. So we didn't waste a bunch of we didn't give them a lot of extra time by virtue of the fact that we didn't eat clock. We did a pretty good job eating clock from that point forward. We did. There's at least 1 or 2 snaps I felt where we should have been more attentive to the clock and snapped the ball later just to burn more clock.
Okay, I'm going to gripe some more, and you're here, Don, to kind of rein me in. But under a minute to go, the game is sealed. Why is Spencer Petras on the field?
I guess because we're afraid that Padilla is going to drop the snap. I guess. The other thing about it,
that seems like you don't have faith enough in your backup quarterback to make a handoff to Gavin Williams.
Just out of curiosity, was 65 still in at center? I bet he was.
That I don't know. He probably was. Sure. He probably was.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We seem to be much more willing to make subs late in the game defensively than offensively. It seems like at running back, skill position players, we have no problem making subs for younger guys. But, even on that last drive for Centeo and the Brams, Iowa had its third unit on the defensive line in the game. And so, obviously, Phil Parker has trust in those guys. You just wish that Brian and Kirk had trust in the backup positions at quarterback and on the line late in games, because you hate to see Spencer or Tyler go down late.
Well, I honestly wondered, of course, when they turned the ball over on downs, we were on the plus 15 or something. And I was just curious if we were going to take a knee or not. That was the first.
Yeah,
that was my question. And I don't want to read too much into this, but I'll put it this way. I think if Kirk and Adazio were longtime friends, my guess is at that point we'd have taken a knee. The fact that they're not longtime friends gave us reason to go ahead and run a couple of plays, maybe.
Now, when you say they're not longtime friends, Don, do you know something I don't know as far as their relationship?
I don't. I just have known Steve Adazio for a long time, and let's just say he's not one of my favorite people. I don't know how Kirk feels about him, but I have an idea of how I feel about him. I was coaching in Connecticut when he was coaching at Boston College, so I'm familiar with him. And for that matter, when we were at Buffalo, we were button heads with Boston College then too.
And obviously, Kirk coached against him when he was at Indiana as well.
I didn't even realize Adagio had been in Indiana. What was it in Indiana?
Let me look it up here, Don. I researched this earlier in the week. I've got it here. Hold on just a second.
Must
he
be
was at
10 years ago or
Indiana.
more.
Yeah, he was in Indiana from 03 to 2000. 02 to 2004. He was OC in 2004 only. But he was O-line coach from 02 to 03.
Okay, way back in time. Who knows what might have happened back then? I don't know, but I just knew he wasn't my favorite coach. I'll say it that way. When I was back east coaching, and
well, if that's the case with Kirk, and I don't know if that's the case, Don, but I was in my back of my head, I'm thinking, I know that Kirk is not a style points coach. I get that, but 31 to 14 would look a lot better than 24 to 14 if you are in late November competing for a playoff spot. Am I correct?
Yeah, and yet you don't want to throw the ball into the end zone because you get roasted for that. But nothing says you couldn't run a couple of plays, and if we score, we score, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just thought if we're not going to throw, why not run with, and we're going to put Gavin Williams into the game, then let Padilla hand off to him. But again, that's just me.
You're right. I do recall a year ago, just thinking back to analytics from last fall, there was a time or two when Ohio State had the game won, and I was mildly surprised when I noticed they didn't always take a knee. Sometimes they continued to run plays. They didn't throw the ball, but they simply ran plays, and they were in the red zone already. And I think the thought process, you bring up a good point, Corey. Is it maybe the difference, just realizing people look at final scores, is it a difference in making the playoffs and not making the playoffs? You could argue last year in Ohio State's case, you could argue that might have an element of truth to it.
And to me, and maybe this isn't how coaches look at it, maybe Adazio would have taken offense to it, but if you were to put Padilla in the game and run a couple pass plays, you could at least give the persona of, and I know you don't want to throw a pick in that situation, but if you were to do that, like a naked boot, like you recommended for Alex several times, if you were to do that, you could at least say, well, we're just trying to get our backup some snaps, and you could also gain some style points if you score.
Right. Very true.
So
honestly, if you put in the backup, I know I, as a head coach, if the other team was going to win the game and they put in a backup and he threw the ball late in the game, I certainly wasn't going to be critical of the coach for doing that because I'm recognizing they're trying to get him some actual game experience. And it's something other than handing the ball off.
Yeah, I would not have had an issue with that at all. Doug Phelps says Ohio State is in trouble this year. I saw they were down early to Akron. I have not seen a score here recently.
That would be earth-shattering.
It would be. Charles Pinster says Adrian Martinez was knocked out of the Nebraska game early. So that's something to follow.
I did see that Michigan State went up early second quarter, 7-0.
I did see they were up. I saw they were up 7-0. Okay, Joseph says, what is Coach Don's perspective of the O-line? We had a long conversation about this before you got on, Don. My perspective of the O-line, let me just give you my take, and then you can kind of take it from there. And I'm comparing the struggles on the offensive line this year to 2019. I always compare it to 2019 because to me it was clear that Iowa just was very deficient with guard play. They had two super seniors basically with Levi and Landon Paulson who struggled on the interior. And to me, the struggles against Michigan, the struggles against Penn State that year were not going to be corrected midseason. To me, those were issues that were probably just issues we had to live with given the fact that these guys were, again, super seniors. To me, this line has an opportunity to develop because they are freshmen. I mean, three of the five starters today were freshmen in Colby, Richmond, and DeYoung. So I think there's a lot of room for this line to grow mid-season, Don. Am I wrong on that, or how do you see it?
No, you're correct. You're correct. And a lot of people might want to make an issue of the fact that we have a new offensive line coach. Let's not forget that it's not his job all alone. I believe there's a former O-line coach that's pretty good by the name of Kirk Ferentz too, and for that matter, Brian Ferentz. So, and I like the new offensive line coach. I think they made a good hire there. I knew him. He used to coach at Illinois State when I was at Western Illinois, and they had outstanding O-line play back when he was coaching there. So I think it's simply a case of having a lot of young players, and it's not easy to become a really productive starter as a young player, especially in the O-line, because there's not just a mental aspect, there's a physical aspect to it also. And, they're getting bigger, stronger, faster, but you don't do that overnight. It takes a little bit of time. And they'll get there. And in the meantime, they're going to be smarter about how to play football than they were a month ago. So we're moving in the right direction. It's kind of painful sometimes to make that slow but sure move, but that's where we are.